Heyo everyone, MimiVix here with a lore theory video coming fresh off the story events released in patch 7.3 of Dawntrail and the conclusion of patch 7.0's storyline. That said, a spoiler warning is in effect right off the bat as this is new content as of this video's production. I understand that many people, myself included, prefer to enjoy games and stories at their own pace, and I also understand there are a lot of people who may not even be in Dawntrail yet. What I want to say ahead of the video is that I hope each and every one of you enjoys the adventures Final Fantasy XIV has given you, and that it continues so more minds can join together in the theory crafting. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's dive right in. So, the player found out that the governing powers behind the curtain in Alexandria promised life free of the fear of death to 5,000 individuals provided they obtained and registered a neo-regulator. To sow the seeds of fear, Calyx used sentry units and other machines to target Alexandrians that were no longer wearing the regulators, viewing them as having forfeited their lives. This created a large amount of panic and even distrust amongst the people who were driven to committing acts of violence against each other just to secure a neo-regular registration. Facing Calyx within a meso terminal at his invitation, the Warrior of Light and allies stood with the goal of shutting down the terminal, thus destroying Calyx. Calyx revealed his plans, however, and activated the 5,000 neo-regulators, creating a wave of enthralled, which all channeled their aether together, allowing Calyx to perform a primal summoning of Necron. This would be the point where I actually go on a rant about Necron, because I have history with Necron, but I will at least say that Final Fantasy XIV's implementation of this particular enemy at least made sense. We know that this is a primal summoning as it is actively called out by Y'shtola, which officially means the Scions are now on the books and mobilized, as it is the Scions' responsibility to deal with primals. Calyx, realizing that his terminal is now in danger, tries to perform a data transfer as a way to escape death. But the Warrior of Light, Sphene, and Wuklamot put an end to that dream, or so we think. I just wanted to add in the fact that Sphene's cast animation is more aligned with the Summoner cast animation, even without the special grid effect, which really hits home the lineage that the Alexandrian royal family has a connection with the Summoners. Everything begins to return to normal, and Sphene is actually made queen. So everybody gets their happy ending, right? Not quite. After all of the happy cutscenes, we are taken to a dark void, but not one that we're familiar with. It's cold, isolating, and artificial in its presentation. We, as the player, witness Calyx emerge and show manifestations of physical responses to extreme stress, which, up until now, was never shown in an Endless. After a tantrum, another form appears within this void, clad in Ascian robes. They are abruptly cut off at the shoulder, but Calyx's words inform us that this person is above him in some capacity. This unknown and, to the player, silent Ascian is the door to which our story will pass. Endwalker saw the legacy of the Ascians come to a close with the destruction of Meteion and the fading of the likes of Emet-Selch. This is incomplete on a number of cases, as there are several Ascians that are unaccounted for. There are several instances where we are given the status of Ascians. However, some of these are not set in stone. The reason being is how Ascians, as well as select races of beastkin, have gained a form of immortality. I mentioned in my video about Alexandria, about the Final Fantasy crystal theory, and how all aether travels through the ethereal sea to the star's mother crystal and then back out to create new life. Final Fantasy XIV has the same general premise, but with a little intricacies thrown in We learn that all the way back in A Realm Reborn, that the life, death, rebirth cycle, and that Sahagin have a means to bypass it. At this point, the Scions realized the Ascians were bypassing the process, enabling them to use anyone near as a puppet, or even just hide in what I'm going to call the Void Realm, which isolates their aether, preventing it from joining the sea. All of this is from A Realm Reborn, well over a decade ago, which seems a little bit strange, but it's not the first time that information and even characters were brought back. We saw it used in Shadowbringers with the reintroduction of Graha as the Crystal Exarch, Moen Brida's axe and Aisha's scope back in Endwalker. This trait is not exclusive to those that are close to the Warrior of Light. This tactic was used in Stormblood to reintroduce characters such as Gaius and Nero as newfound allies. A counterpoint to this technique was also used to show some of the Garlean tech in aether tampering, such as when the Warrior of Light is faced with a reborn amalgamation of Nail, who was a major antagonistic force back in Coil. This technique is also used in revealing certain technological aspects of characters, as Emet-Selch actually spoke to the Warrior of Light during the Elpis arc about a device known as Kairos, which the player actively sees being used by Hermes in an attempt to wipe everybody's memory before he set Meteion free. This means there is a good chance that our mystery Ascian, if real, hails from the game's past encounters, major or minor. While we have a firm grasp on the major players, we have a few loose ends on some of the minor players. I checked a little bit on the wiki and dug through some lists and found that the current information on Ascian Rebirth was not actively present. While we are sure Gaius disposed of some of the Ascians as he held their mask as trophies, we also know that they can be reborn as mortals. We've seen this happen with Gaia. This means that without a proper way to trap their aether, using Orosite or some other form, an Ascian can revive even if they rejoin the ethereal sea of a star. Looking over the list with this in mind, I felt that whoever it was would need something that could connect them to Calyx. The Ascians had many goals. Most of these plans became lost behind the revival of Zodiark, which is understandable. The main goal, which we saw unfold in Shadowbringers, was the Convergence, where the plan is to make all of the reflections fuse back into the source as it had been originally. Zodiark, at his full strength, could do this task easily, but required large amounts of elemental aether to reach this, hence the various calamities. Without Zodiark, this plan is back to basics, where teams of Ascians work on various reflections and wait their turns, so to speak, to spark the correct calamity. The 9th reflection was being ushered into 11 calamity, but having hands on the ground is always the best task. Much like Garland from 9, this Ascian found a weak and desperate person and made them a puppet. This puppet was Calyx. We know Calyx was born with a terminal illness of unknown origin and symptoms. Having a brilliant mind but frail form, and having to face the reality that he may not live into adulthood, likely preyed on his spirit and drove him to try and find a way to avoid that fate. Final Fantasy IX has a lot of these sort of themes of defying your fate and your destiny. Definitely need to give that a shot. There is a bunch of parallels. But who's to say that an Ascian did not approach and tell him that there was in fact a way to defy death? This person knew desperation would feed darkness and used that in order to convert Calyx onto a dark path, a path he would be sworn to secrecy in as the cataclysm drew near. Using his knowledge and the discovery of Electrope, along with having access to what essentially is Elpis technology, since we know the Ascians are from Elpis. Calyx created his organization and thus pushed the game's events forward. So what about all of this connects Calyx to the Ascians? The desire to preserve order of all things, to defy death, to be immortal. Preservation is the key in this. I sound pretty confident for a person who's just prattled on about stuff that anybody who's played this expansion would know, but I promise I actually have a point. All of it is connected by the word preservation. I believe that our Ascian friend is Pashtaro, an Ascian who was in charge of preserving discipline and order. He also has a connection to Kairos, which is, again, the device Hermes used in order to record and observe the memories and actions of the creatures they made on Elpis, so that way he could get the desirable outcome within a subject without destroying the subject and wasting all of that aether. The fact that Kairos has the ability to do this, plus alter and erase memories in living subjects in real time, I don't believe is a coincidence. What are endless if nothing more than a projection of a memory comprised of aether? The cinematic actively cuts off the Ascian's shoulder pauldron in such a way that we cannot see if there's anything above the mid-shoulder, which is extremely suspicious, especially since most of the stuff that I have found just shows that Pashtaro doesn't actually keep his hood up, which means you would be able to see his hair. His face has always been shrouded in shadow, but it seems that he is known to have spiky blonde hair, which would be a particularly distinct feature even in shadow. Thus, my theory is that Pashtaro was assigned to the ninth reflection and used Calyx as a means to an end, and even taught him primal summoning, allowed him to have access to Kairos in order to better suit the regulator use and thus fuel his plans. The Endless are simply a way to prevent aether from returning to the crystal, ultimately leading to the death of countless stars should he gain access to interdimensional travel. But yes, I do feel that it is a remarkable coincidence that we have preservation being the name of our organization that we are up against. The rebels against preservation are oblivion, which means they side with the natural order of things of the life, death, rebirth cycle that is across every star. And I don't think that is a coincidence. I really don't. I think that it was put there in plain sight specifically for people to look at and theorize and then come together and ping those ideas back and forth on each other. So 100% I would love to hear your view, your opinions. Please let me know down in the comments. I would adore to hear further theories, expansions on other theories, why you think maybe it's not this guy, why it's somebody else. As always, thank you guys so much for joining me for this video. It was a ton of fun to put together. I got my mind blown so many times doing the research for this. I had people at work thinking I was nuts. But until next time, have a great rest of your day. See you later.